Hello, welcome to Trail Buddy. I'm Mark. Today we're going to go over our luggage rack options that we have. So we've got two luggage racks. They are the same luggage rack, the same size, dimensions, and whatnot. But what they do is we've got one that's in a black, kind of a matte semi-gloss, and then we've got our chrome option here. So these are pretty sleek. They work great as a grab handle here in the back, keep you from destroying your seat pan. They mount over the shock bosses here, and then they also utilize the two either threaded holes or clearance holes on the side of the frame. They come with a provision here on both sides to mount your blinkers, and little tabs here for mounting your bungee cords and or rope or whatnot. I've used this several times to get bags of ice for soda, and it works great. Put a bungee cord around a big old bag of ice. And what we've had before, we've always had this one here, the chrome version. New to the lineup now is our black one. So there's a lot of people going with the black look for controls, handlebars, and whatnot. So this should lend itself pretty nicely to that. So you don't have to try to paint the chrome one black. What you get with the kit, these will come with either or, depending on what color you want. Is we've got all the fasteners you're going to need here for at least mounting to the frame. So we're assuming you're reusing your acorn nuts and washers here for the side, because your shocks should already be there. If they're not there, we do have those available on our website. So what we got here is we've got our M8s and our M6s. So depending on what kind of frame you have, some of the earlier years, they don't have threaded inserts in them. So then you would use the larger 8mm. And then I can't tell you exactly where they did the cutoff, but the later years, I would think anything that originally came with blinkers should use these M6s. But check out the holes on the back by your where your taillight mount bracket would go on the side. If they've got bigger clearance holes, you're going to want to use the 8s. If they've got threaded inserts, you've got the 6s. But we supply both of them with it, so you don't have to guess. So these will be coming with it. I think what we're going to move down to now is we're going to go ahead and put this on early model year Trail 70, and we're going to show you how to bolt it up and how it looks. So for this bike, we have chosen the chrome option just because everything on here is more of like original, so we're going to go with the chrome. So then we also need to select which fasteners we are going to use on this chassis. So this one has the holes on the side, but there is no welded on insert, threaded insert. But what I'm seeing on the one that we have here is it looks like there's two pieces of metal that overlap each other, and the holes are quite concentric. So we are probably going to have to go with the M6 fastener option here. But we'll check to see what fits. Oh boy, that doesn't even work on here. So we will have to drill these out. Maybe not just. There we go. Bunch of crud in there. Just works. All right, so we're going to go with our M6 options. So the first step we need to do when installing the rack is, one, you got to make sure that you don't have the wider tail light, because that'll end up hitting here. I actually have one right here I can show you. So when you've got the 72, maybe 73, you've got this model tail light, what happens is this isn't just quite wide enough for that to clear it. So if you do have one of these on here, one of the options is to get one of these either older or newer ones that have a more narrow lens. So something to look out for when you're planning to do this is make sure that if you do have this one, that you purchase a skinnier version of that. I'll put that off to the side for now, but that's just one thing to look out for. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen up these big acorn nuts here that hold our shock and our exhaust on. So once those are loose, we can take these little tabs here and we can slide that behind the actual washer and the acorn nut. So you can kind of make the judgment call on your exhaust if you either want to be on the inside or the outside of that exhaust hanging bracket, and that depends a lot on the type of bracket that you have. So this one's pretty flat. We may end up going behind it, but we'll see how that fits. But what we're doing is we're going to slide it on that tab, and then we're going to tip it down until it lines up with the holes here on the side. So the installation is pretty straightforward. The one thing you got to look out for, though, is you want to make sure that you get everything dry fit before you start socking down any nuts and bolts. Because what can happen very easily on these is it's such a large span that if you tighten one side, you can, like, that's obviously exaggerated, but you can cock that thing over and then the other side won't line up. So the best thing to do is what we're going to do is we're just going to get everything started, finger tight, and then once the threads are started, then we're going to start socking everything down tight. So first step is we're going to unloosen these guys right here. So another thing to note after I've put so many of these on is, let's pull it back off. This dimension between here and here can vary widely just based on shipping, if it was, and how they were making it or welding it. Welding stuff seems to put a lot of stress into framework like that, so it can bow out quite a bit or bow in. So do not be afraid to take these and, let's say if they're too far apart, get on the workbench and push down, try to bend those together. This one's actually pretty good out of the box. Or if it's too pinched together too tight, don't be afraid to pull it apart. But this one here, I just need to pry it in just slightly. So we're not too bad. So I also find that it helps to start in on an angle like this and then tip it back. And then as I'm tipping it back, I'm pushing it forward into those slots. So get that started. It's also a good idea, if you've got a nice freshly painted bike, is to put a fair amount of tape over top of your paint here. So that way you don't, this one's already kind of well used, this frame, so I don't think we'll see anything if we do end up scratching it. But one thing to look out for, now in the kit, you're going to get 2 long fasteners here, the M6s, and then you're going to get some washers that are just a little bit larger than you normally would use with an M6, but what that does is that spreads the force out over this mounting tube. Get those started. Then I also find that I end up using a dead blow hammer just to tap this around so I can get the threads to start. Now for the inside, once we get these screws or these bolts here aligned with those holes in the inside and we gently tap them in, we've got a lock washer and a nut that you have to put on the inside. Now again, you may not have to use this depending on the the frame that you're working with. So some of the later year models, they already come with threaded holes in there already. Some of the clone bikes will come with threaded, or they'll be clearance holes. So for now, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to tap this guy around and try to get it to where my fasteners here line up with the hole in the inside. So here you can see on the left and right side how I've got just a couple threads, these acorn nuts grabbing onto these studs, and I've got my smaller fasteners here just finger tight and started. So now once I've got everything, a couple threads in, now I can work myself tightening these first and then the shock towers last. So what I'm doing here is I am jumping back and forth between the left hand and right hand side as I'm tightening them. So that way I'm trying to equalize the pressure that I'm applying on here. So that way if I go to tighten one side, it's not trying to cock it over. I'm kind of moving myself and balancing it out. Again, I'm starting with the smaller, longer bolts here on the side. And then the last thing I'm going to tighten would be my acorn nuts up front. And then I'll just go over everything one more time just to double check. Double check my back bolts, and we got it. So that is the installation on the rear luggage rack. Now the black finished version is the same as this guy. And the key thing to remember is to not get frustrated with this, because you are working with a welded frame. And I have run into it where these, just like we had it with this one, where the holes where these side fasteners go were closed up. I maybe probably should have taken a drill and opened those up. So that way they can, you just don't want any binding to happen, because you can get into a real pickle quick with this guy if you, again, tighten this all the way down or this and not try to equalize it out as you go is really the key for the rear luggage rack. So it's a really good addition too, because as you go to like move your bike around the shop or anywhere, you've got an instant intuitive grab handle here that you normally would grab. So instead of picking up on your seat here and bending your seat band over, you've got a really nice bar that goes from the shock tower, all the way back, that you can grab it to manhandle your bike around. So that concludes the installation of the rear luggage rack. So if you like this guy, check it out on mytrailbuddy.com.